Bruchim Aboyim to the 13th and continuing series of shiurim on the Gimel Ikkarim of the Rambam, the 13 principles of Maimonides. This is the 13th shiur, but it doesn't mean that we're finished with the principles tonight. In any case, we're still in the Yesodei HaTorah, the 8th principle, which the Rambam says is Torah min hashamayim. And I'm going to read over the Rambam again. I'm reading from the Shilat edition, as I have been along the course of all the shiurim. The entire Torah that we have today, Moshe, was given to Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Torah is entirely from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To say, everything came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the entire thing. Which the term that's used by the Chumash, even though we can't really say that, Chas v'shalom according to the Rambam, we can't say Kadosh Baruch Hu speaks, but the expression used is dibor. And in fact, actually, the only person who knows how this came to him was in fact Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is on the level of a sefer, that it was said to him, and he wrote the entire thing down. Both the historical accounts in the Chumash, the different stories, and of course the different mitzvahs. And he's called a mechokek. So in other words, and of course the Rambam says, and goes on the Rambam and says that Elakol Mila, every word in the Torah, Mimena Yesh B'Chachmos Uploim L'Misha Evinu Hashem. There are tremendous wisdoms for any person who has been given understanding by Kadosh Baruch Hu. L'Tusak Tachlis Chachmasa. One, the knowledge is infinite. The knowledge is in every word. Now, in fact, the Rambam is going to tell me that the important point of the Rambam is that the wisdom of the Torah is infinite. Which means, of course, the Moshe Rabbeinu heard it directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and is a sefer, a scribe. There's nothing in the Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why every word has infinite wisdom and infinite depth. If something came from Moshe Rabbeinu, so even though the Rambam has told us in the Yesodei HaTorah that Moshe Rabbeinu's intellect achieved the highest level of the intellect of any person who came before and after him, nonetheless, that intellect for sure is limited. But the very fact that the Torah comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe Rabbeinu is only the sefer, so therefore, in fact, this wisdom is infinite. Lo tusak tachlis chachmasa ve'in ha'olam el lahalach big for his dovim b'shech el keyankev v'shiyus palo gal einay v'binut for his peresecha. So in other words, the important point that the Rambam is getting at, that's what I concluded this year last time, was that we should know there's infinite wisdom in every word. And the question really would seem to be is, what is the Rambam getting at when he says there's wisdom in every word? So, what I spoke about last week was the Perushim HaMekubalim, that in fact Moshe Rabbeinu received at Sinai. But the Shittas HaRambam, as we spoke about last week, was in fact that most of the drashas of Chazal, right, were generated by Chazal. They weren't there. We do not have them as a Messiah tradition by Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the Shittas HaRambam, as we spoke about. This is a Sheresheni. This is an Akdoma to the Perush Mishnayos, meaning that according to the Rambam, Chazal were able to uncover drashas and depths even beyond. I'm not saying beyond that which were understood, but certainly these were drashas that were not handed down to us from Moshe Rabbeinu. So, in fact, what the Rambam is trying to say is that the depth of the Torah is of such infinite depth that even generations after Moshe Rabbeinu were able to uncover drashas that were not heard from Moshe Rabbeinu. This is really the point of the Rambam. So in other words, and this is where the Rambam comes at the end and says, Ukmo ken perush hamakubal. who gampi mipi agvura. In other words, the perushim ukubalim, the interpretations of the Rambam heard at Sinai, and these are specific. These are a certain amount of number that are mentioned: sukkah, lulav, shefer, tzitzis, and tefillin, which is in fact halacha l'mash b'sinai. It's not technically halacha b'sinai, but in fact halacha l'mash b'sinai, which we're going to mipi agvura. But nonetheless, what the Rambam is really saying is that there's infinite depth of the Torah, which was the wherewithal and the means by which Chazal could actually darshan, right, interpret the Torah, in fact, generations after Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, what I'd like to focus on a little bit tonight is exactly the concept of Moshe Rabbeinu being a mechoikek, being a scribe. Now, we have already discussed previously that, and I proposed the idea, the conjecture that in fact it would seem that the intellectual stature of Moshe Rabbeinu is not related to his title as mechoikek, as a scribe. In other words, even though Moshe Rabbeinu, according to the Rambam, both especially in the Shiur Shvi and the Moreh Nevuchim, achieves an intellectual level in which he's HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals to him the entirety of the universe and the interconnections between everything in the natural world, in which he's able to ascertain the ethics of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nonetheless, Moshe Rabbeinu as a mechoikek is not acting in this manner, but rather is in fact actually a scribe who is dutifully just copying over what he hears. Now, in fact, this leads us to a very, very interesting question, which I'd like to raise, because I haven't seen the kasha asked so much by really many mefarshim. I did look at the Franklin Rambam and see that one or two people asked the question. The Rambam Shita, which appears in the 33rd chapter, the second edition of the second chelik section of the Moreh Nevuchim, the guide, Parak Lamed Gimel, which begins in the Schwartz edition on page 377. The Rambam clearly states that at Har Sinai, the Dibur came to Moshe Rabbeinu, just to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rambam says that clearly that Borali Shemamad Asina Lo Kol Ma Shigil Moshe Gil Klal Yisrael El HaPni Haisel and Moshe Levad. Because Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu alone. L'chein Haisel Pni Basel Sadibis Kulu Beloshin Yochid Noichach. Therefore, the seven Dibrois are in fact actually Beloshin Yochid. Okay, in the singular. Who all of us Shalom Yerin Al Tachlis Ahar Medil Anoshim Es Asher Shema. Moshe Rabbeinu went down and told the people what he heard. Loshan Torah. Anoichi oimid ben Asher v'nechem eisei lahagid lechem es dvar Hashem. V'chein Amar Moshe yidaber v'lekim yen b'kol. V'chilto ne'emar, v'chilto it says, Kav harish haya choyze lahem al kol diba diba, k'fi Moshe Rabbeinu was choyze to them, repeated to them every diba diba that he heard. Okay? Okay? Gam ken loshan ha'torah bavo yisham ha'om d'b'dabri imach hu raya shapniya haisa elav. Right? Right? In other words, the Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke to him, to Moshe Rabbeinu, Va'od heim shomim es kol hagadol. They heard a sound, they heard a kol, ach lo et pilot hadribo, but they didn't hear words. They heard a sound, but not words. But the words were repeated by Moshe Rabbeinu to Klal Yisrael. Okay? And goes on the Rambam, and raises the question, the Gemara says in Menachos, that the first two dibros were heard in Piak Vura. That was meaning that we cannot apply to that Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. Hakavana, says the Rambam, the intention of what Chazal say, Shemigiu Aleim Keshem Shigil Moshe Rabbeinu. It would appear that they reached Klal Yisrael the way they reached Moshe Rabbeinu. But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't bring these two dibros, the first two dibros, to Klal Yisrael. So the Rambam, because these two Ikkarim, because of Ikkarim, which is the existence of God and his incorporeality, that is one, they can be understood by the human intellect. Okay? So because of that, Klal Yisrael is equal to Moshe Rabbeinu. You don't need a war for that. That's what the Rambam says. However, right? It's clear here in the Rambam of the Moreh Nevuchim that Klal Yisrael did not hear the diblois, not even the first two diblois, but rather they heard a sound, but they heard a call, but they didn't hear any words. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he heard the Diva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, repeated over word for word to Klal Yisrael. Okay, now, on this I want to raise a question, a contradiction, to what the Rambam says in the Yad HaChazaka. And this is a question that's bothered me for many, many years. I'm reading now from Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, in the 8th parak of the first halacha, parak Shemini halacha Aleph. There the Rambam says, I'm reading from the Rambam, Moshe Rabbeinu lo haimenu bo Yisrael b'pnei ha'oseh she'aseh. Klal Yisrael didn't believe in the Nevuah Moshe Rabbeinu because of the miracles that he did. Shamamin al pi ha'oseh sheish b'libo doifei. Whoever believes based upon miracles is a fool. She'ef she'yasa ois balat v'kisha. Because it could be that a magician does a miracle. Elakol ha'oseh she'asa Moshe b'midbar lefi ha'tzoich asan. All the miracles Moshe Rabbeinu did in the midbar were for practical reasons. Lo lavi chayal nevuah, but not to bring proof for his prophecy. Tzorach lashkias ha'mitzrim. He had to drown the mitzrim. Koras hayam v'tzlilim boy. So therefore he split the Yam Suf and he drowned them. Tzorchenu l'mazon. Klal Yisrael needed food. Harid lanu haman. He brought down the man. Samai. They were thirsty during a thirst. Bakalem es ha'evet. So we split the rock. Kafu, etc., etc. So says the Rambam, uvamayim minu boy. So why did Klal Yisrael believe in Moshe Rabbeinu? The Mabad Sinai. So Rambam says, the Mabad Sinai, that was the point of belief. She'nenu roi v'lo yizah azinu shom v'lo acher. That we saw and we heard. Ha'esh v'akoyz v'lapidim. V'unigash al arafel. Moshe Rabbeinu enters into the arafel, into the fog, or the cloud. V'akol medava elav. And the voice is speaking to him. V'anu shoymim, and we hear Moshe Rabbeinu lech emo lahem kafakach. Moshe Rabbeinu tell them this and this. From the Rambam, it's explicit that Klal Yisrael heard the diblois at Har Sinai. V'cheinu omer. And so the Rambam, and therefore it says, Ponim beponim dibar Hashem imochem. Okay? Okay? And this is in fact actually, right? And the Rambam goes on and says, B'nai Shemamar HaSinai levade hu haraya l'nevuah, she emes, shem bodoif. And everyone knows that Har Sinai is the proof for his nevuah. Shenema hinei anochi ba'elecha ba'ava onam, ba'avo yishama on b'daber imach, v'gam b'cha yaminu la'olam. The Rambam actually quotes this pasuk. Ba'avo yishama on b'daber imach. It's interesting. The pasuk he quotes here from the Mechilta, in the Moreh Nevuchim, is the proof that the only reached Moshe Rabbeinu. And here, in the Yad HaChazaka, the Yesodei HaTorah, he brings us as, of course, a proof that the Mabad Hasidut was the basis of the Jewish belief in Moshe Rabbeinu, but the clear indication is that Klal Yisrael heard the entire Dibur. So we have in fact, a complete and total contradiction between what the Rambam says in the Moreh Nevuchim and what he says in the Yad HaChazaka. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't really know well. I did look in the Frankel edition, like I said, and I saw that some people do raise the question, but I don't see that the question is raised by most of the commentaries, most of the Mefarshim. Certainly the commentaries in the Yad HaChazaka itself. What do we do with this contradiction? Now, it goes on. The Rambam explains that because of this, nimsu el sholech lem ha'edim lo alvu she'emes. Right? Kishnei Edim, etc., etc. Kach Moshe Rabbeinu kol Yisrael Edim lo yachab b'maratzino ve'inu tzorch l'sos lam eis. So, in other words, the Rambam goes on to explain that therefore, because of this, Klal Yisrael were Edim, witnesses, the Moshe better received the Torah, and it wasn't done through a noise. Now, but even without the Moreh Nevuchim, to raise several questions. Question is, if we're to understand the Rambam, that Klal Yisrael heard the HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking directly to them, so what distinguishes this from any other names? In other words, the Rambam's clear distinction is that you're not supposed to believe based upon a noise, based upon a miracle. So, it would be clear that in Matan Torah there was no miracle, because the Matan Torah is a miracle, so it's also a noise. We have to make chakiras and distinctions, brisker distinction, this type of voice, that type of voice. I mean, if Kodesh Baruch Hu speaks to Klal Yisrael is a madreka of Moshe Rabbeinu and hears the words, that's a miracle, that's a noise. Now, we could say it's a Ma'aseh Nevuah, and we could say, in fact, actually, as I explained earlier, that Nevuah is much more of a natural thing, as explained by Nevi'im, but not the madreka of Moshe Rabbeinu, that they hear the deep voice explicitly.
But one could say that the nace was that they were put on the level of Nevi'im.
That's a nace, though.
That's a nace. But then, having got the miraculously, which you don't believe because of that, but then they heard the words, and it's the word of God that.
Okay, fine. But once again, we'll speak. Yeah, but we are clear. Right. I understand. We can make chilukim that this ois is different than our ois. But the Rambam clears to be saying is that there was no ois involved, and that's what he and the losh of the Rambam is. First, and also to the rest of the Rambam is. We actually heard. If it's the voy, you don't say something like that. It's Rias Nevuah. The Rias Nevuah is not a. The Rambam is the language of the Rambam. We ourselves saw, we ourselves heard, is much, but it wasn't B'derech HaNevuah. Because, and in any case, if in fact they were at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rambam should say they were at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Ramban says they were at the level of Nevuah. The Drosh Haran says they were at the level of Nevuah. I mean, the Rambam should have said explicitly they were all at the level of Nevuah. My question is, there is a gapping contradiction between what the Rambam says in Yesodei HaTorah and what he says in the Moreh Nevuchim. In fact, the Shiddur Nevuchim is actually brought by other Rishonim, the Rambam, the Bava Batra. So the question is how we're to understand what the Rambam is. Now, I mean, what the Rambam says is very clear in the Moreh Nevuchim. What I would like to do is I would like to suggest a slightly different reading of the Yad HaChazaka. Okay? Now, to give a little bit of a Agdama, there's a Gemara in Bava Batra that Tezvav Ben Aleph. And there, the Rambam is speaking about, the Gemara is speaking about the last 8 psukim in the Torah, and whether they were written by Moshe Rabbeinu or by Yeshua, they were written, of course, the 8 psukim in the Torah written after Moshe Rabbeinu was Nefta. So the question is, how were they written? So Nehemiah says, right? So he says, right, that Ad Kana Kadosh Baruch Hu Oimer, right, until Moshe, right, dies, until the Kadosh Baruch Hu Oimer, or Moshe Oimer v'Kaisef. Moshe would say it would write. Become ve'elach Kadosh Baruch Hu Oimer v'Moshe Kaisef b'dem. From then on, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, and Moshe Rabbeinu wrote b'dema. Now it's interesting in the Shas in front of us, in the garden in front of us, there's a little aleph there, and the aleph is actually refers to the Goy's Habach, and the Bach says you should say Ad Kan Kadosh Baruch Hu Oimer v'Moshe Kaisef. It was basically what the Bach is saying is that right, is that the word Oimer and Moshe Rabbeinu should not be in there. But in fact, actually, there's a machlokes. The Ritva brings a machlokes. and the Rishonim who actually go is Moshe Omer for Kaisef, right? And this is discussed. There's a machlokas Rishonim what girsa is. I want to claim that the Rambam's girsa was Omer for Kaisef. Kodesh Baruch Hu Omer, or Moshe Rabbeinu Omer for Kaisef. That was Kodesh Baruch Hu would tell Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu would say and say. Now, the fact is, this was very good with the Moreh Nevuchim, because the Rambam says, right, brings a mechilta, right, she'achoyz lahem al kol diba v'diba kifi sheshamu. In other words, Kodesh Baruch Hu would speak, and Moshe Rabbeinu would repeat over each one of the dibros. Okay, repeat each one of the dibros. Now, in fact, actually, the Rambam here brings a mechilta, but it could possibly, it probably is that, in fact, I mean, the Rambam was, let's say he was assuming he's writing the dibros at that point. So even at Har Sinai, we could assume Rambam would say, and then, after Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu would say it, and then he would write the Sefer Torah. Now, of course, in the Rambam, it was mashma. The Rambam holds that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Sefer Torah at the very end of the Aboim Shana, but certainly, Moshe Rabbeinu, we see that there was a din of Moshe Rabbeinu to say the dibur after Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke to him. And it could possibly be that this is the din, this is the makor of the Gemara. Now, so if we understand that Moshe Rabbeinu said each dibur after Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke to him, I want to suggest a new reading of the Rambam. Let me back up and say like this. How do the Jewish people believe Moshe Rabbeinu? Why do they believe Moshe Rabbeinu? But Mamar Har Sinai. At Har Sinai. We heard, and I want to say we heard and we saw meaning. It wasn't something that a person could be besuppak on, could be down on. It wasn't a niece. It was a natural hearing, a natural thing. Right? What do we say? Ha'esh ha'kodesh v'lapidim. It's interesting. We saw Eish kodesh v'lapidim v'unigash al-harofel v'akol medaba elav. Moshe Rabbeinu enters into the harofel. He enters into the cloud, and the kol is speaking to him. So up till now, this is right. Up to now, the kol is speaking to him because they heard a kol. The Rambam says they heard a kol. Now, after that, the Rambam says, "Va'alu shoymim Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe lech emolahem." It's interesting. The Rambam doesn't say, "V'unigash al-harofel v'kol medaba elav Moshe lech emolahem." It doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. And the Rambam should have said, "V'unigash al-harofel." He enters into the cloud. V'kol medaba elav v'omer Moshe lech. That's what the Rambam should have said. But rather it says, "V'unigash al-harofel v'kol medaba elav." Va'anu shoymim, and we hear. What do we hear? Once again, if it was the kol, it should have said, "Va'kol medaba elav va'omer Moshe." But rather, I want to say, who did we hear? We heard Moshe Rabbeinu. We heard Moshe Rabbeinu repeating over the dibros that a Kodesh Baruch Hu spoke to him. In other words, the way I want to suggest to read the Rambam is, "V'unigash al-harofel." V'akol medaber elav, the kol is speaking to him. V'anu shonim, and what do we hear? We hear Moshe Rabbeinu is writing over the Torah, because in fact, Kodesh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Jewish people. So we hear Moshe lech emolem kach v'kach. In other words, we heard Moshe Rabbeinu.
How does this give us emunah in Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the whole point here?
The emunah is very good, because so that the Rambam is makter. Why? First of all, we hear this Asian kodesh and lapidim, and we hear a voice. We hear a voice. We can't make out the words. But we do hear a voice. And then Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating over what he hears. In other words, we clearly see the act of prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. But in fact, we don't hear the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
But then we don't know what he said.
What?
We could have heard something completely different.
It could be.
So how does it a vindication of Moshe's authenticity?
It's a vindication of authenticity because I want to claim that in such a setting, with Eish Lapidus and the ends in a Raphael, and there's a voice which people heard, which probably was a voice that they had never heard before, and Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating over the words that he hears through his nevuah. So it was clear. It was clear. People saying it was clear that the Moshe Rabbeinu was singing a prophecy. That's how I understand. It is true that if we would have heard the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, and that's the shita of the other Rishonim, then fine. But the Rambam clearly says in Moreh Nevuchim that what? That it wasn't true.
When we last went through this sugya in a different
yes, I said right.
Different shuva.
Right.
I said that
right. Very good.
Was not the same as
no question about it. About a year ago or 2 years ago, right, in Rabbi Ardensen's in Baruch Shalom's house, right, I wanted to give what's called a brisket tables, that there were two dinim. In other words, that there was what Kodesh Baruch said to Moshe Rabbeinu, what we heard is two different things. So it's an elegant teretz, but it doesn't have anything to do with reality. Now that you mentioned, I wanted to say that, in other words, what the Rambam means is that we heard HaKadosh Baruch Hu speak to Moshe Rabbeinu. We didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to us. But the question is, after you think about that, what is the difference? You know, it's a lomdish teretz, but I'm not sure it means anything. Anyway, this is what I want to say.
It's more in the pshat with the Rambam. I mean, what you're reading into the Rambam now is a difficult reading the Rambam.
It's maybe a difficult reading, but it's another reading. And plus we're dealing here with the chiddush that does not mention any Moreh Nevuchim. If it would accept what I said before, the chiddush does not mention Moreh. In other words, in the Rambam, the Rambam doesn't say any explicitly that Klal Yisrael heard HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
With Dvar Shematim B'toch Eish doesn't mean literal. It means
that's you're dashing psukim. So you die b'piat v'ur. The Rambam not dashing psukim like that. The Rambam.
No, but how do I understand the pasuk the Dvar Shematim B'toch Eish? That you heard his words. It means not the actual words.
No,
it's just the code.
The Rambam doesn't say that.
No, don't the pasuk. The pasuk says it.
Okay, you want to dash the pasuk. The Rambam, I mean, you can dash the pasuk any way you want. The question is what the Rambam meant. The question is what the Rambam meant. Look, right? It says in the pasuk, "Kol devar batem shomim u'tmun enchem ro'im zulas kol." You only see a kol. You didn't hear words. It's clear in the pasuk. The Rambam brings the pasuk. You didn't hear words. The Rambam repeats over and over again. They only heard a kol. They didn't hear words. And this is the shittas Rambam. That not everybody can reach level of nevuah. That's the Rambam says in the beginning of Lamed Beis. And certainly nevuah Moshe Rabbeinu. Nevuah Moshe Rabbeinu. According to the Rambam, it's impossible that anyone could possibly reach the nevuah Moshe Rabbeinu. According to the Rambam, most people can't even reach the level of nevuah. That's the Rambam says. Why does the Rambam say somewhere where there was exception to Har Sinai? In fact, in Perek Lamed Gimel, the Rambam, in fact, is what he says in Perek Lamed Gimel is a consequence of what he says in Perek Lamed Beis, that not everybody can reach a level of nevuah. Certainly not a Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, to say that all Klal heard at Har Sinai Moshe Rabbeinu would actually contradict the seventh principle. So therefore what? What I want to propose is the following thing.
But he goes on to say, Panim b'panim diber Hashem.
I know. No, imachem means what?
Imachem means with who?
Imanachem means, it could be referring to the kol.
Panim b'panim doesn't mean a kol.
One second. Okay, that's what you were. Okay, then he brings three psukim. Panim diber Hashem imachem. He spoke with you. But what he spoke with you? He spoke to Moshe upon him, and with you means Moshe Rabbeinu pin it over to us. In other words, however you're going to learn you all like the dash the plus like Moshe Rabbeinu Gevurah. The question is, what is the shittas Rambam? The Rambam clearly says in the Moreh Nevuchim, and this is and the Rambam says it here in the Yad too, that not everybody can reach a level of Gevurah. This is Rambam Perek Shvi. This is not a contradiction from the guide to the Mishne Torah. In any case,
Well,
look.
1 second. It says here, Avur Yishma Ha'am B'Dibri Imach.
B'Dibri Imach means what? The Rambam uses a riot. They only heard a call, and not the Rambam brings the same bus that broke it into the rich the other day. Only Moshe Rabbeinu. Imach is Lashon Yachid. You're just proving to me what the Rambam says. The Gemara says that Ayin Dalam with Beis that Rabbi Matas was dashing a pasuk in Vayikra. So Rabbi Yechon says, "Was he thinks he's Moshe ben Piak Vura?" Because there was a Teras Kahanim. The Rambam brings his psuk in that you're mentioning as a right Lashit in here. Yeah.
Two short questions.
Yeah.
What Rabbi Triebitz was saying is that when God spoke to Moshe, Moshe said over what he heard, and that's what the people heard while he's on Har Sinai. Or he came back down after and said, "This is what I heard on the mountain."
No, I think he probably said it when the voice came out. That's what they heard. He worshipped and said, "Oh,
so
right
Moshe was closer over what God put as he's writing it, and that's what the people heard.
Yeah, or maybe as he's writing it, but certainly he's closer over at the same time too.
And somehow this voice then, with Moshe's voice,
it was clear. In other words,
miraculous as well.
Right. No, it was clear. It was clear from the setting that Moshe Rabbeinu was hearing these words of Yaakov.
Okay. And the other pshat question, when we did the seventh principle, we said the godless of Nevos Moshe Rabbeinu was he at the ultimate level of Chachma without any dimyon and God and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Why would there be a voice associated with, why would there be a sound associated with the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu? What were they hearing at Har Sinai? Mm-hmm. They were hearing and seeing all sorts of amazing things, but that wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah.
You're right. So the only thing I could say is that somehow, first of all, the Rambam he mentions it 2 places. He says, right, Ha'esh ha'kodesh v'lapidin v'kol medaber elav. First of all, it doesn't even mention a call. They heard this call, but there was Eish kos lapidin. Somehow, call when the Rambam says call, when the Psukim say call, it could possibly be that they heard sounds and voices, which were, let's say, natural things. But somehow, it was so clear to them, that gave them the clear impression that Moshe Rabbeinu, right, was in fact perceiving a dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which he was later on repeating to them. In other words, look, I wasn't there, I can't tell you. No, well, my mazel was there, right? No, we were there. That's what Gemara says in Shabbos who was there. But what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is the following thing is, in the Rambam does not say explicitly anywhere that Klal Yisrael directly heard the dibros of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It said they heard a koil speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then it says Va'anu Shoymin. Va'anu Shoymin. Now, why did the Rambam write it like this? I can't say, except the fact to suggest that the Rambam, that it was so clear that Moshe Rabbeinu was having a nevuah. In other words, the entire scene of Har Sinai, it was clear to them that Moshe Rabbeinu was having a nevuah. But it wasn't something that involved a nace. That's what I want to claim. In other words, it was an experience that people had. But it wasn't a noise. It wasn't a noise. That's what I want to explain the Lashon of the Rambam is. In other words, I know it's a dark in the Rambam. On the other hand, though, if you look at the Rambam is very, very careful in his words. He says the koil medaber elav. Why did the Rambam say the koil medaber elenu? V'anu shoymen. Or the koil medaber v'oimer. In other words, the Rambam says the koil medaber elav. Kama. V'anu shoymen Moshe. Who do we hear Moshe? So in the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam fills out the thing. The Moshe Rabbeinu was mashpia every dibur against the Klal Yisrael. There's no reason. No, I don't see any reason not to learn it this way, and therefore we've resolved this burning contradiction between. It's not between the guide and the Mishne Torah. In Perek Zayin, the Rambam says everything he says in the guide, that not everybody reaches, certainly don't reach the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. It is true we shouldn't argue on this. The Drosha Saran says explicitly that a house in the earth reaches Moshe Rabbeinu. But that is not the Shittas HaRambam. And there's nowhere in the Rambam says, Punkt are the opposite, both the guide, both in Perek Shvi. So therefore, it seems to me that we have to, now why did the Rambam write it like this? I want to claim the Rambam write this because the Rambam wants to convey the sense that it was certain to everyone standing at Har Sinai that Moshe Rabbeinu was experiencing a nevuah. It was clear. Just like now that I'm sitting at this table speaking to a few people, and this is not, I don't know, matrix or a dream. It was clear to people. Not to mention that I want to say something even more too. The Eidim of Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah. If they would have heard from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did they be Eidim of Moshe Rabbeinu? They themselves heard the Diba of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
The Moshe was.
I understand that, but when you think about it, they could have heard the Dibbois and be Eidim that they heard from HaKadosh Baruch Hu too. In other words, it's
Moshe Lechem or Lehem.
I understand. So that just begs the question: why is that Moshe? They hear it themselves. So the answer must be they didn't hear it. That's what I want to claim. In any case, I know that this is a novel reading, but I want to suggest it because the fact that I think what comes out from this is a very interesting thing. First of all, I think the point is that Har Sinai was a natural event, and I think that's what the Rambam wants. What the Rambam wants is that the Torah didn't come through an ice. In fact, it didn't come through a nevuah. It came to the nevuah by Moshe Rabbeinu. But after that, there was a nevuah, which, by the way, fits into what the Rambam says, actually, in the next principle, that ein navi rasha l'chadash beidava. The only navi who hears is Moshe Rabbeinu. No one else can be a navi. And the Eidim who witnesses the nevuah cannot be the Nevi'im either. So, in other words, because of this, I want to suggest this novel reading of the Rambam. You have a question?
You mentioned earlier, I don't know when this can shoot, you were saying something about like your Mazal was at Har Sinai, but you weren't?
No, the Gemara says that the Gemara says about the Gerim or something. We were at Har Sinai, right. But the Ma'aseh, the Gerim were at Har Sinai, the Gemara says, the Mazlai were at the Har Sinai, and in a certain sense, it's brought to the Meforshim, and Shams were also at Har Sinai. Yeah.
What are the clouds and the fire? If everything's al pi teva, why do I need those?
I think because I think the Arafel Kol would somehow serve to give the people an understanding that something was happening. In other words, I think a Moshe Rabbeinu would have just sat there and if I hear a voice, I'm telling you, I think that it would have been
That's
much more of a doubt. That's what I think. I think the Rambam stresses this. Meaning is that the circumstances of our city was such there was no doubt that anyone who stood there that Moshe Rabbeinu heard the Dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So when the people in the Pesukim say to Moshe Rabbeinu, we can't do this anymore, we can't take this anymore, now you go to speak to Hashem.
By the way, the Ramban learns, that's speaking about before the Aseret Dibur. When they heard the Koilos, they were frightened, and they said to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Ramban Latera there, he says that they were frightened and say, Moshe, don't tell us anything. It wasn't, in other words, the Ramban learns that there's no Mukhah book to the Latera. Look at the Ramban. Ramban speaks it out there. Okay, fine. In any case, like this. In any case, this is my proposed reading of the Rambam and the Mishne Torah. Okay? And I'll leave it for you to think about. You can contact me. If you agree, fine. You have to contact me. If you don't agree, you can also. In any case. But I think it's worth thinking about. The language of the Rambam definitely says Darshani. It's a difficult language of the Rambam too. In other words, not that the Rambam is simply... If the Rambam said, they heard, like Yisrael, we heard Kadosh Baruch Hu saying to us, but he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. Okay? Okay, now, what I want to...
So why would...
Yeah.
Based on the Gemara, Bava Batra, Moshe was saying...
By the way, I want to say the makor of this, once again, is good, is actually this girsa of the Gemara in Bava Batra. Yeah.
The Gemara says that Moshe wrote down every word or before Kadosh Baruch Hu said it. But why would he?
No. This is he write down the word. He said it over.
Right.
Well, actually, in the Rambam's mashri word at the end of Yaboim Mishana, but there's a machlokes in Shas and Samach B'Alaf and Gittin whether it's
Why would Moshe say over Moshe Lechem or Lehem?
Oh, I think it's very, very good. Because the Torah says that. There was Moshe Lech, in other words...
doesn't say Moshe.
No, it doesn't say Moshe. But in other words, it could possibly be that that's a siva of Kodesh Baruch Hu.
Lechem or Lehem kach v'kach.
Right. In other words, I hear what you're saying. So I want to claim that Moshe Rabbeinu is called a Mechoykek. Moshe Rabbeinu was compared to say every Kodesh Baruch Hu said to him. Even Kodesh Baruch Hu says, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Leimor. Moshe Rabbeinu say that too.
But that's not much for the Bava Batra.
Okay, fine.
That's a new chiddush.
Okay, no, right. Yeah, however, it could possibly all these psukim is what the Rambam mentioned, the psukim in Yisrael, right? Vayidaber Hashem is called Devarim Eila, so Moshe Rabbeinu said that. Or in other words, the Rambam is paraphrasing things. The Rambam is not saying Moshe. In other words, the Rambam in Parshas Yisrael, every time the Kodesh Baruch Hu speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu says that Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Leimor. In other words, Moshe Lech Amim Kach V'Kach. Could possibly be that all the things that the actual tzivah Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe Rabbeinu, which has to say over too, and that would actually fit in. But the Rambam says that every word the Torah will say Kodesh Baruch is not only the mitzvah itself, but even the Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's also said over. That's what I would claim.
How do you understand what the Rambam says? Shehein v'hu eidim b'davar, k'shnei eidim sharu davar echad b'yachad. Shekol echad mehem.
No, but
each of them saw the same thing and
no. That's not something about Moshe and Klal Yisrael. You're reading wrong. Kach Moshe Bebeinu Kama Kol Yisrael eidim loy. No, but I know I'm in base too. Look at the next line. Yeah, look at the next line. Klal Yisrael were eidim to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is the Geba Dover.
What's Hein v'hu?
No, but go on the next line. The next line. Kach Moshe Rabbeinu Kama Kol Yisrael eidim loy acham amar Sinai. That's what the Rambam means. In other words, we were eidim to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu can't be an aid. He's the Geba Dover. We're eidim to Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, on this basis, we can have two eidim every generation. If Moshe Rabbeinu is an age, you can't produce another Moshe Rabbeinu, but you can produce two people who ate him to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what the Rambam means, for sure. Okay, in any case, we will allow you to contemplate. That's what the Rambam is saying. In any case, yeah.
Isn't there like an idea that the Jews that witnessed Har Sinai, they were on a level that was higher than the Nevuah of Yechezkel?
No, there are Rishonim who hold like that. No, that's me about Kriyas Yamsuf. The Gemara says Shivcha Ayam. That's a different thing. That's Kriyas Yamsuf. But that's number one. Number two, okay, the Rambam speaks about that. All I'm saying is, look, there are Rishonim. Once again, there are Rishonim who argue on this. The Rambam for sure argues. The Ran argues on this, but I want to think this is the Shittas Rambam. The Shittas Rambam is.
He's saying that Moshe was the only.
He says it. Rambam says it's
both. All the Jews were just witnesses to the Nevuah.
The Rambam, look at chapter 33 of section 2. He goes on for a long time explaining that. Because the Rambam says like this. He says that also in Parasite of Yesodei HaTorah too. The Rambam is very, very clear. Look, there are some achradim do ask this kasha. Okay, that's what I want to say. In other words, now, what does this have to do with us, besides the fact that now we understand what I'm saying in the Mishne Torah? I think it's important to understand over here is that that Moshe Rabbeinu is called the Mechoykek. This is actually Ma'amad Har Sinai, in a certain sense. That he's repeating over the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, and number one is that the words of the Torah are from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're not the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, of course, the Rambam says that, but we see clearly from Har Sinai that's true. The Rambam, and that, in fact, maybe that's why the Rambam says, the Lashon of the Rambam is Moshe left Emelem kach v'kach. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating over Kodesh Baruch Hu saying to him. Even Kodesh Baruch Hu says, say over this and this. that the words of the Torah are the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Which means is that the Torah doesn't come from the intellect of Moshe Rabbeinu. As vast and great as the intellect of Moshe Rabbeinu was, and the Rambam says that no other person will achieve an intellect, but the intellect of Moshe Rabbeinu, like any person, right, is limited. Because Baruch Hu's intellect is infinite. And that's what it says, and why is this important? This is important because in this way, there can be drushes for the rest of history. If the Torah is limited to the intellect of Moshe Rabbeinu, so there's no basis of the Torah should be al peh. Certainly, l'shitas harambam, that the drushes are generated in generations afterwards.
But is that the shita of other major Rishonim apart from the Rambam?
Other Rishonim, well, the different Rishonim argue. The Triebitz certainly argues. The Ramban in Shorish Beis seems to argue, but we have to discuss. That's a discussion. There's a Ritva, there's a Go'aryeh. This is a long discussion. But the Shitas are Rambam. Look in the article in Rishima, number 1. But the Shitas are Rambam is the drushes after Moshe Rabbeinu until the end of the Sanhedrin, or right until the Tanoim, right, were generated by Chazal afterwards, and it's only in the infinity of the Torah, even beyond the intellect of Moshe Rabbeinu, is what creates the wherewithal that Chazal can make drushes that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have. So this really fits into the Shitas Haram as a very, very important yesod. Yes, you have a question.
Okay, I mean, like basically you're saying like if this is what Moshe was able to understand.
I can't say I have
my
reading glasses on.
You have a circle, and basically that's what Moshe was able to understand, right? And Hashem obviously has a larger understanding, right?
I can't see the geometry. No.
Okay, but what
Kadosh Baruch Hu's understanding is absolutely infinite. So that means is that people, in other words, that means is that there is infinities in the Torah, which were revealed by were darshan by Chazal after Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what I'm saying.
Didn't know or didn't.
Once again, there is a Gemara. I won't go into it right now. That's look at Haman Alf and Blachas. Moshe was given everything. Everybody's going to Mechad. It's a different interpretation of that. The Rambam. I'm not going. The fact is that if the Torah is not infinite, it's finite. So therefore, there's no basis by which Chazal can make their own drashas. That's what I'm saying. Now, did Moshe Rabbeinu know this beforehand? That depends how you learn the Gemara. Daf Haman Aleph Task I spoke about last week. Okay, I'm not. But apparently the Rambam understands that I mean, from what the Rambam says in the Yad, it's going on the Perusha Mukubalim. But right now, that's a different
You
conversation.
said the Torah is infinite. You mean the words of the Chamisha Chumsha Torah?
The depth of the Torah is infinite. This is infinite words of the Torah. That's ridiculous. I'm saying that there's an infinite depth in every word. And therefore, right, Chazal can use the given midas in
But the part that Moshe received as infinite was what we can.
What Moshe Rabbeinu received was the Torah Haksuva Mamish. He was a Bachok. He was a scribe. The Ram emphasized he was a scribe. It wasn't the scribal. What Moshe as a scribe was not something which, in my opinion, required his great intellect.
Surely it's not infinite, because infinite would allow for every possibility and its contradiction.
Look, he says, Lo tusak tachtas chachmas.
Right.
Whatever we understand it. Arul kemeretz midu chalav minei yam.
Very big.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Pure and big, whatever it is. Okay. We're going to finish over here. We're going to stop over here because I think that more or less we have covered things. This finishes the Yesodei HaShmini, right? Which is very important, and we're going to begin from Yitzhak Hashem the next time Yesodei HaTorah, which is the Bittul of Torah. In other words, up till now, the Yesodei HaShmini deals with Torah min hashamayim. The Torah is mamish min hashamayim. Yesodei HaTorah speaks about the eternity of the Torah. Can the Torah be nullified at any point in time? Can Mishne Torah be nullified? It can be added to, subtracted to. So this is going to be the Yesodei HaTorah. Yesodei HaTorah is going to be very important because the Yesodei HaTorah really establishes the basis of the halacha as it applies for all generations. That Matan Torah is something which defines the the very basis upon which all Halakhic Judaism operates in all generations. That will be next week from an undisclosed place in Yerushalayim, Kodesh. Be well, have a nice week.